Hello and welcome to Talking Live. I am so thrilled to bring you Al Guart. He is a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist known for his hard work in investigative work. He has worked for the New York Post and CBS News. He has done some really hard hitting cases that involve murder. So that was right up my alley. But he's really a Renaissance man, and we're going to get into his latest book called Beyond the Sphere. And it's about these godlike encounters or godly encounters that has really influenced his life. And there's a message and motive behind writing this book for everyone out there. It's perfect now for the holidays when we're thinking about divine spirit and how it can impact our lives. Al, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be
I'm
with
so thrilled to have you here. And obviously we spoke before this interview just to learn a little bit about each other. And I was telling you that I spent last night with you reading through the book. And I have to say, I have so many dog ears throughout the book. I found it so interesting. And I wanted to go back and really look at some of the quotes that you mentioned and how you phrase just these divine encounters. Okay. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what motivated you to write this book right now?
Sure. Well, this has been something that's been kind of brewing in me for 40 years, right? So these encounters were back in 1980. I pretty much kept them to myself because I didn't really know what to do with it. And I was in college at the time, and I wanted to, pursue a career in journalism, and I studied philosophy. And so I didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't something you could really talk about much, especially when I was younger. I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And being in eventually being in the media, being in New York City, it didn't seem like a topic I would bring up in my conversations with people. It's just something, but I tried to integrate it into my daily life as much as I could. And well, we hit 2020 and I decided, I had an opportunity to write a book. And people have been pushing me to write books about crime and other things, taking over a hotel in the Catskills could be a fun book, and coming from the city and all that. But when I asked myself, if I had 6 months left to live, which book would I have to write? Which one do I have to do? And this is the one that came up.
And I'm so glad that you did. You really talk about your life history and how it influenced and opened you up to having an awareness about these encounters, because some people may have these encounters, but because they're not attuned to them, they don't identify it as such. You mentioned about your background, your Hispanic background, and your mother and your aunts having seances, and that somehow gave you a front seat to what you write about in this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from as far back as I can remember, the family would get together on a regular basis, and at different homes, and they would hold these seances, and they were for family members. Usually they would have a problem that, they lost a job, or, they thought their husband was cheating on them, or whatever the problem was, they would consult the spirits. And so they would have these tables, mesas, or whatever you want to call them, but they were tables where they had the candle and the glass with the water in it. And one of them would eventually go into a trance and then start speaking, come out of the trance, they would go limp and then come out of it and start speaking. It was all in Spanish, by the way. So, and then they would start talking about the causes, what was going on in the spiritual world that was causing the problems and what they needed to do to address the problems. And it could be anything from burning a photograph, or, they had these things that they would do, recommend. And that's how, I grew up with that. That was just normal. I didn't think it was abnormal till I thought it was scary, but I didn't think it was abnormal until later on I met other people and they said, well, that's weird, So that's what happened.
You also describe the moment when you had your first encounter, Al, were you aware that it was some kind of divinely spirit when this first happened to you?
There was no doubt. There was no room for doubt what happened. I know some people looking at it might think I was suffering from heat exhaustion or something. They may have some other explanation. But when it was happening, there was no doubt. There was like a flip switch. It just went off, and all of a sudden there was this joy, this amazing bubbling joy, and there was obviously something there, and I was in the middle of it and kind of experiencing it and being part of it. And there was no distance between me and this thing, which I eventually, said it had to be God, because this entity that I was encountering knew me, knew everything about my life, and was there just kind of to let me know, I'm here, and you have nothing to fear. Um, I love you. I love everyone. I just want you to know I'm here. And when it ended, my life was turned around. I mean, I was no longer an agnostic, no longer doubting anything about the existence of God, no doubting that my life had a purpose. These things were bothering me, deeply bothering me when I was younger.
What is it like to live with a knowingness that God exists and is participating in your life?
It's kind of a double-edged sword in a way. In one way, it's very uplifting. You feel great. You feel like you have a new life. You feel so excited about the future. People on the campus in the college used to say, they used to see me walking along, and I looked like I was on a mission. I was, very focused, and I knew what I was doing. And it was a shock, I guess, for some of the people who knew me beforehand and knew me afterward. Went from this kind of, wiry haired, hippie looking guy to, I had a suit and tie on, and I was, I thought I was definitely onto something there. And I was very happy and excited about life and all its potential. On the other hand, there's a little bit of a sadness that it's not happening all the time.
Mm.
I mean, it's such a glorious thing, and then you're part of you is constantly missing it. But it becomes a more indirect relationship, which I get into a little bit. We talk about faith. Faith is more indirect relationship where you see evidence of God working in your life by what's happening in your life.
It's interesting. I heard Kathy Lee Gifford, who is a very both spiritual and religious person. She's a real deal. She really speaks from the heart and is authentic. And someone asked her, why didn't you write an advice book? And she said, because it would be really short. It would be trust God and that's it. So I've always really admired her just strong sense of belief and faith. And in your book, you talk about some of the great spiritual leaders who created religion, how there was something they all shared in common, and it had to do with a loss that you also shared with some of these leaders.
Well, the second visitation, which is where the sphere was revealed to me, that we have a encapsulation around us, that it protects us as we develop. I think our spirits are developing as we live. However, at some point, if you look at some of those great spiritual teachers, they say you have to be reborn. Right? You have to be born again. And I think that this encapsulation is something that eventually we need to come out of, and enter the spiritual realm and start to see there's more to life than just material things and external successes and all of that. There's something deeper meaning. So in a deeper relationship to life and to others and to even our creator and to nature, that we can get to that, but we need to start realizing that we are encapsulated to some degree, various degrees for different people at different times. And so that second visitation was really powerful. It was very sad at the same time to realize that there's this incredible love and and beauty available, but most of us are missing it. And so part of the reason I wrote the book was to say, this is what I experienced. And, this fear is something that is real, and we can start to examine that and become aware of it. And then we can start saying, well, what's beyond it? What's on the other side of it, and exploring that.
What do you think would help the average person enhance their ability to tap into this other sphere?
Mhm. Uh, I think becoming aware of the limitations, part of the process of spiritual growth, if you want to call it that, is becoming aware of your beliefs and the things that your truths. I grew up a certain way, and my truths are this. I believe some people might believe all men are evil, or all women are evil, or all religion is bad, or all religion is good. We have truths, we have beliefs, and those beliefs end up limiting us. They can really become handicaps for us spiritually. And so I think one thing we can do is become aware of our beliefs, the way we think, the way we limit ourselves, and the way we limit other people, and open up a little bit, and not to be judgmental about it either. You can't condemn yourself for having these beliefs. You can't hate yourself, and you can't go to war with yourself. But you have to love yourself, and the same compassion you want to show your fellow man. You have to show that to yourself as well as you go through
And
the
you also talk about the power of empathy,
Mhm.
and as a parent, how to raise your child to be more likely to have these encounters.
Right. Yeah, we train our children. We want our children to succeed in life, and sometimes we might go overboard with that. We want them to compete and be, and they can become ruthless. We don't want to create necessarily that type of individual. So raising children is important, because it's expanding the possibilities for humanity. That we can all become more aware of our divinity, and the divinity in others. So there are things I've tried to do with my own children, and to just point out things to them, and say, hey, look at that. Did you see that person over there? And I ask them all the time, how do you feel about this happening to you, or that? And we have discussions, and I try to live a life in my daily life in a way that models some of those things, and not being perfect, but I'm conscious that I'm an influence on these people in my life, and I try to point them in that direction, to think about other people, think about their feelings, think about their own feelings, get in touch with themselves as well.
In the book, you talk about the power of synchronicity, and how synchronicity has been a constant theme in your life. And I think many people know that, we live life forward, but we can only understand life in retrospect. And I think that there's a lot of truth there. There was a book called God Winks, and it
Mhm.
was all about the various serendipitous encounters that really were life altering. I know that I've had them in my life. And you talk about witnessing them in your life.
Einstein, who was a believer in God, believe it or not, said, um, uh, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. It's a very interesting quote. Um, and I found that a lot of times I was resisting a change in my life, fighting tooth and nail, only to realize that there was something wonderful waiting on the other side of the change. And I've tried to become more aware on the spot, that a change is taking place now, and I should be open and aware to see the potential, where it's going, and try to ride that wave, as opposed to just being pushed along the wave and then looking back and seeing that it was good. So I've tried to accelerate the process in my days by being aware that, okay, a change is coming. It's a little uncomfortable. However, based on the past experience, I think I can be confident that this change is going to be good, and I need to just pay attention and try to work with it.
I've noticed in my own life too that sometimes during the darkest moments is when we're forced to sit quiet and rely on a power bigger than ourselves to get through. And there's this quote, I believe it's a Rufy quote. Does that sound accurate? Am I saying that philosopher
Goofy, yeah.
correctly?
Mhm.
And when you look at things not happening to you, but for you,
Mhm.
and I really do believe in that idea, because some of the harshest things, when we look at how it changes us and expands us in terms of how we view ourselves in the world, it's very powerful. And I just can't recommend your book enough, during this time when we're just really sitting in 2020 and really thinking about our lives, and it's a stop and pause moment, and rethinking our value systems and what matters and what doesn't. And you have a lot of powerful stories in here, and I'm going to encourage people to get it. A story about your son who you were advised that it was not even a viable pregnancy and you resisted, and now what is he doing?
He's about to become a medical doctor,
So
surgeon.
that is just one of my favorite stories in here. And I know you have a favorite chapter. And one of the things I want to recommend as a therapist, and you talk about this in the later chapters in your book, the power of music
Mhm.
and the universality of music. And you also have some songs in here and the words that you think indicate a godly encounter.
Mhm. Yeah, after, those encounters, like I said, my relationship was a little more indirect, and so, which would be more like a normal life. Most of us are experiencing God indirectly by
Mhm.
things that occur in our lives, and in that regard, I started to hear God singing to me through songs. I mean, just I'd be walking along or something. I'd be
Hmm.
in a store and I'd hear these lyrics, and I studied music, and I play jazz saxophone. So it's one of my things. So I love music. So I think maybe people have their own thing that God can reach them through different means. It could be through anything. It could be through a child. It could be through the sound of the wind. It could, there's a million ways that God can reach us. And one of my ways was music. And if you look at some of the songs I recommended in the book, the lyrics are just plain. Like the one that says, uh, soon you will see me because I'll be all around you, but where
Hmm.
I come from, I cannot tell, by the Moody Blues or Pink Floyd, or, there's just so many. I listed it.
And also, I think too, I don't know if you've had this experience, Al, when writing or just doing the various work that you've done over the years. I know I experienced this. Sometimes I just feel like a knowingness when I'm writing or when I'm with patients that the message is coming through me.
Mhm.
It's not coming from me. Sometimes it's coming from me, but other times I really feel it's just coming through me. And, I think that that's an example of a divine encounter when you can be used as a channel for something that is bigger than you for the greater good.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to emphasize in the, I guess, in more toward the conclusion of the book, that some of the beliefs that we've developed because of the divine encounters of others in the past, and they became religions and they became beliefs. People don't even believe they have the chance to encounter God. And if you say that you did, they'll think you're crazy, that you've hallucinated, right? So we've actually become very negative about a possibility of an encounter with God. And we think we have to die to see God, or be
Mm,
in,
very true.
the pearly gates, and you may not get in, you might not be
Yeah.
good enough, right? So we have original sin. We have a lot of ideas that are getting in the way, I think,
Yeah.
and they limit our
It's
thinking.
just such a great point. Al, where can people find you and find your book just in time for the holidays?
Well, I have something that I put together just for the people that listen to your podcast. Okay. If you go, there's an eBay page I put up. So I'm selling the book on eBay myself,
Okay.
but specially for your folks, they can order it. I can autograph it and Christmas wrap it if they want,
Oh,
and mail it out to them. So, and there's discounts if they buy two, if they have a friend, they know somebody that, otherwise you can get it on all the usual places, Amazon or Barnes and Nobles. There's some local bookstores upstate that have it now, and we have a webpage, alguart.com, where you can order it through there as well. So it's easy to find.
Fantastic. Al, thank you so much for being our guest on Talking Live, and thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you again next week.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.